Hi, this is Lecture 5, and we're entering into Chapter 4, which is computer software, specifically application software and end-user applications. As with anything in information systems, there's different types of computer software. We want to give you a major example of some of the major types of application and system software, which are uniquely different, and then we'll explain some of the popular software packages and end-user productivity tools. I also want you to know a little bit about the operating system of how computers work, the difference between Apple, the difference between PC. They utilize totally different operating systems. They're both very good, and they have slight differences which you probably already know anyway. We also need to talk about programming, software, tools, and languages to help you understand how computer software is developed. And then we need to identify or just have a discussion about open source software. Open source software is not licensed. Open meaning it's free. It's available to the public. There are open source operating systems, and there's open source application software and end user software. Companies utilize a blend of those depending upon their need. So what is software? Basically, software is a set of instructions that informs the computer what it needs to do. And specifically then, how to interrelate with some of the peripheral devices as well. So that's why there's two different types of software. There's system software, because that basically informs the computer what to do when you press a key or you press a button on your mouse. Then there's application software that utilizes those commands to perform specific functions. So application software for end users is what you generally use. Those general purpose application programs are like what we call productivity packages or productivity suites, like Microsoft Office. Microsoft Office is a suite of end user application programs. Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Access are all in that suite. They all perform different functions, but data and information can be shared amongst them. There's three different types of software generically that we want to take a look at. One is custom software. That means it's designed and developed custom, specifically for a particular job or activity. Commercial off-the-shelf software, or COTS, is developed and meant to be used by many people. It's more generic, so it's not specialized. That's where Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint come in. That's COTS. That's commercial off-the-shelf software. And then there's open source software. This is free software that anybody can modify. Many times, if you're certified and you modify that software, you can send it back to where you received it, the copy from, and they will certify that as being a new enhancement to that open source free software. Here at APU, we have 3 programmers that are certified to develop for open source, specific types of open source software, so that we can contribute back to the open source community. You remember this slide? This slide first appeared in Chapter 1 when we talked about generically about Introduction to Information Systems. So this gives us an idea of the different types of software. And in fact, this also depicts a very rough depiction of how IMT is organized at APU. So we have systems people and we have application side. They're both two different skill sets entirely. Two different programmers, types of programmers, and systems people. Now, business applications software is very specialized and specific to different business functions. In this particular example, we see here's those 3 acronyms that I showed in the very first lecture when we talked about the 3 acronyms that I really want you to know by the end of this class: CRM, ERP, and SCM. The customer relationship management, enterprise resourcing planning, and supply chain management systems. All of those are specific business applications. In fact, these are considered enterprise business systems. Some other business application software are human resource management systems, accounting, which is the oldest system known, and then finance systems. Also, we to help us with some of those applications, we have decision support tools like data mining, which sounds a little odd, but actually data does need to be mined. It needs to be very carefully crafted to be extracted out from the mass amounts of data that are out there. Then we have enterprise information portals. Home.apu.edu is the enterprise information portal for APU. It is for faculty, staff, and students, and depending upon whether you're a student or your faculty or your staff, different menu options appear through that portal. Technically, behind the scenes, there are over 1,500 applications or services that are offered through home.apu.edu. Can you imagine trying to have bookmarks for every one of those 1,500 applications or services? That's why information portals are so critical. And then knowledge management systems. And we've talked about them before, but this is one of the growth areas within information systems and within institutions that recognize that being a learning institution, storing that learning and then capitalizing on it and continuously improving that learning is going to help an organization be better at what they do. We've talked a little bit already about some of the software suites. One of the software suites that we utilize here at APU is Microsoft Office. There are some advantages to them, and there's also some disadvantages. You can see what they are there. The major advantages is the lower cost and the ability to share information easily between the different products. So you can cut and paste information from Word into Excel, into PowerPoint. And then there's a fourth product that's called Microsoft Access, which is a database product. A lot of people don't use that, but it's still part of the suite. And that's part of the disadvantage. You're paying for all this capability when really you're only probably utilizing 10% of it. So why pay 100% for 10% of what you're using? It's a great paradigm, and Microsoft is starting to change that by going to subscription-based licensing, where you pay for only what you use. Many organizations, software vendors, are going in that direction for the future as well. Then there's software suites that are lighter packages of the Office productivity suites like Microsoft Office. So Apple provides one, it used to be called iWorks or AppleWorks. Both of those were lighter weight packages that had a word processor, a spreadsheet, a presentation software. They were not as robust as Microsoft Word, Excel, and in fact, Microsoft itself has a lighter version of Microsoft Office. These are nice because many times there's no license involved, so they're free. They take up a lot less space on your hard disk, and many times they have that capability that you need without all the bells and whistles and complication and sophistication that some of the Office productivity, the full Office productivity suites have. When all is said and done, in the end, I believe that in the future there's only one piece of software you'll have to run on your computer or your smartphone, and that's a web browser. That's it. It's becoming the universal application for just about everything. Until then, of course, there's still electronic mail and messaging services and system software out there that we're using. Even though we're a Gmail school, there's many people on campus that still like to use Outlook on their computers to organize their email more efficiently. That will probably always be the case. Word processing and desktop publishing is identified singularly here because Microsoft Word itself can now be used to publish books, which is huge. In the past, when an author wrote his script, his manuscript, he would send it in to a publisher, and the publisher would use a special desktop publishing software that was unique for writing books and being able to publish books. Now Microsoft Word has that built into it, so anybody can be an author, anybody can publish, and so this has really opened up the door and reduced the cost of getting books onto the market. Another productivity suite tool is spreadsheets and presentation graphics. So spreadsheets, Microsoft Excel is universally the universal standard on spreadsheets, and it's used for all kinds of things: planning, budgeting, analysis, graphics. Many people take data, big data, from other systems, download it into Excel so they can manipulate it a little easier and they can do the graphing a little easier. So there's all types of scenarios. In the business world, spreadsheet is probably the most important application that you will ever have to learn. Second to that is the presentation graphics like PowerPoint. Once you have that data and you need to present it to a wide variety of people, taking the data from Excel and moving it into PowerPoint is your best method for doing widespread communications. Very powerful pieces of software. You don't see personal information managers much anymore because our cell phones have our calendars, our email, our messaging all in one, and so it's we don't really see PIMs as standalone applications that much anymore. And also with Google Docs and Google Apps, we don't see the need for groupware as much as well. Groupware is meant to be a collaborative workspace for teams. Works really wonderfully. There used to be specific software, and there still is, that dedicated in the groupware category. Lotus Notes, Lotus Domino is one of those pieces of software that is specific for groupware, and it does it quite well. Microsoft has its counterpart in SharePoint, and of course Google has Google Docs. This is labeled software alternatives, although in today's world this is actually where we're going. It could be considered our primary source for software in the future. Application service providers provide the software for you. They manage the hardware, they manage the software, we access their software through the internet, and we pay for what we use. So this is sometimes a subscription-based service, so this is much cheaper than buying the whole piece of software, having to buy the hardware, and have that implemented in our own data center, where we're paying for the electricity, the air conditioning costs, the footprint, staff to maintain it, all of that. That is all handled through an ASP by someone else. Cloud computing, you probably know of. Google is cloud computing. And you can rent both processor and storage time from Google on an as-needed basis. The Amazon Web Services and rack space are other alternatives to cloud computing. And this means that a company can start up, not have any of their own IT equipment except for the network equipment that connects them to the internet, and they can have all their software running up in the cloud. Now, one of the things that information technology managers have to be considerate of is the software licensing. It gets a little muddy sometimes, and a lot of times we share software between our computers so often, sometimes we forget about the licensing. Very important piece though, and there are auditing agencies out there that come through and can audit organizations, and if you don't have your licensing up to par, you can be in terrible trouble.